Viewers, ladies and gentlemen, this is Addis Dialogue, a program that deals with current issues unfolding in Ethiopia. My guest today is Ato Solomon Areda. He has had distinguished and phenomenal work experience as a jurist in Ethiopia, and now he has been elected as UNDT half-time judge. So we'll talk about his accomplishments, his work experience here in Ethiopia, and other issues along that line with the program Mamsh Faralak. Ato Solomon, thank you so much for making the time to talk to us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So you have had this great, phenomenal experience as a jurist in Ethiopia, that you have been able to join the United Nations as a UNDT half-time judge by receiving your letter of recognition from Antonio Guterres, United Nations Secretary General. So tell me, what was the process like, and how did you manage to, join this great international entity which is working on creating a better world for humanity?
Thank you very much. As you all know, the United Nations General Assembly has given me this appointment on the 15th of November 2022 in its session held at the UN headquarters in New York. I think following the appointment, the general impression of was like very admirable, and the response and the reaction from the public is very, very positive. The appointment is given, as I said, by the UN General Assembly, and the United Nations is, as you all know, is a multilateral institution, global multilateral institution with significant global influence. It's one of the major actors in international peace and security, human rights, humanitarian affairs, and on other fundamental matters of the global governance. And so to say something about the United Nations Dispute Tribunal, to briefly explain about the United Nations Dispute Tribunal, the United Nations Dispute Tribunal judges are appointed by the General Assembly, and the General Assembly is one of the principal organs of the United Nations, whereby all 193 members of the United Nations are equally represented. And this assembly is the principal organ of the United Nations, which is responsible, of course, for approving the budget of the United Nations and giving different appointments, like, for instance, the appointments of the President of the General Assembly, the appointment of the Secretary General of the United Nations, and the appointment of judges of the International Court of Justice, judges of the United Nations Dispute Tribunal, and the judges of United Nations Appeal Tribunals. The United Nations established recently two layers of the court: United Nations Dispute Tribunal and the United Nations Appeal Tribunals. The United Nations Dispute Tribunal is the first instance court within the internal justice system of the United Nations, whereas the United Nations Appeal Tribunal is an appellate tribunal, assuming appellate jurisdiction over the decisions of the United Nations Dispute Tribunals. And the judges of the United Nations Dispute Tribunals are appointed by the General Assembly, as I said. And so, in short, the United Nations Dispute Tribunal adjudicates those matters, disputes relating to administrative issues and other matters of other internal matters within the United Nations internal justice system. And this tribunal has 9 judges, 3 full-time judges and 6 half-time judges, and it operates in 3 locations in the world. It has 3 courtrooms in 3 locations, in New York, Geneva, and Nairobi. To come back to our discussion as to how the appointment was made, I think in the appointment involves 2 major phases: the selection phase and the appointment phase. The selection was carried out by the UN Internal Justice Council. The UN Internal Justice Council consists of renowned jurists appointed by the Secretary General, and this council, the General Assembly tasked this council to conduct and search suitable candidates for the judgeship position in both United Nations Dispute Tribunal and Appellate Tribunal.
Okay.
So when there was a vacancy, like for instance, in last year, I think the terms of the sitting judges of both tribunals, there are words I think it ends at around June 30, 2023, if I'm not mistaken. And I think, so on the basis of this, I think there was a vacancy. There's a vacancy in the half-time judge and the full-time judge in the United Nations Dispute Tribunal. So what the International Justice Council did was they announced the vacancy on the website of the United Nations. In response to that vacancy, as indicated on the reports of the International Justice Council, in response to that vacancy, 380 applicants from across the globe, from all the continents, applied to this position, and the council reviewed all the applications, and based on the initial eligibility requirement, the council reviewed, and I think those applicants who did not meet the initial eligibility requirements were excluded from the further consideration, and the council invited only 90 individuals to take the written assessment.
All right.
And after the written assessment, the council again invited about 31 candidates for the final interview. To be selected for the interview, a candidate must display, hard to display in the written assessment, the legal expertise, its capacity in legal drafting and written proficiency, and the writing skills, and all the strengths of the legal analysis necessary to be a good candidate in the United Nations Dispute Tribunal. So the process was like...
It was tough competition, right?
It was also tough competition.
Yes.
I've gone past through, it's in addition to this review on the basis of eligibility requirements and written assessments and subsequent interviews, the council also conducted a due diligence about the integrity of these candidates by approaching the National Bar of Associations and the National Judicial Association. In my case, they requested the Ethiopian Bar of Association to confirm about my integrity. So after going through all this process, finally the council recommended me and a Supreme Court Justice from Australia, Justice Joanna Harrison, for the final appointment. And the UN General Assembly was expected to choose from either of us by the voting of the member states.
Again, another tough competition.
Tough competition.
Yes.
You know, the United Nations General Assembly is a political body. Fortunately, the majority of the member states of the General Assembly voted in favor of me, and that's how I was appointed. And I can say that this is really an honor and a privilege for me to have this opportunity of serving this prestigious global institution. And I can say that this is one of the exciting moments in my life.
Wow. When you received that very letter of appointment from Antonio Guterres, heralding that you have been appointed as UNDT half-time judge, joining the United Nations, this multilateral global organization dedicated to bringing about, as you said, peace and security and creating better livelihoods across the nation. What did you feel? What was that exact moment when, at that exact moment when you saw that letter? What did you feel? Had you been expecting that you would be, selected, or did it take you by surprise?
Not only when I received the letter. Even last month I was in New York, and I was
the swearing-in ceremony.
Yes, swearing, exactly.
Yeah,
and I think I want to put both instances and both events together, in a sense that, as I said, it is like, as I said before, it's really honor and a privilege to have this opportunity. And the swearing-in ceremony was held in New York at the headquarters of the United Nations. Regarding my personal feeling about, like what we mentioned now, about what I felt when I received the letter of appointment and when I participated on the swearing-in ceremony, there were a lot of emotions, of course. You know, can you imagine like being in front of the Secretary General of the United Nations, because the swearing-in ceremony itself is led and administered by His Excellency Mr. Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, he himself administering the oaths. And so for me, I think this is like very unforgettable, extremely enjoyable, and I can say it is one of the most important lesson in my life. So during that time, it's not only training, it's not only participating on the swearing-in ceremony.
Yeah, I know that you also took part in the induction and the training with all judges.
There, I also participated on an induction and the training program organized by the United Nations for newly appointed judges.
Exactly.
It was a very wonderful event. The training and the induction was to familiarize the newly appointed judges about the overall functioning of the United Nations, administrative function of the United Nations, its structure, on the major department of the United Nations, the mandate of the United Nations. The training also covered the procedural and the substantive laws applied by the United Nations Dispute Tribunal in handling the disputes that's presented to the tribunal. And I think it is a very quite wonderful.
Definitely, yes, definitely, Solomon. It must have been quite an experience, especially after that swearing-in ceremony with families, friends, and also His Excellency Antonio Guterres with you, and the induction and the training, things like that. And also, as someone, you know, coming from Ethiopia, and as someone who has made it to the United Nations, this global entity, what does it mean for you to work with the UN, especially as someone coming from the Horn of Africa?
I think it means a lot for me. First of all, personally, for me, it is an excellent career move.
Yeah, definitely.
And this with multi-dimensional benefits for myself and for my country.
Exactly.
This is because by my engagement to this highly prestigious global institution, there are benefits and gains for my country, not only for my country, but for Africa.
For the continent.
And also for the entire global south, because it would add to the representation of the voices of the global south. Some may say, what is representation? Representation doesn't make sense for a judge, because whether the judge comes from the global north or global south, the role of the judge is to uphold the rule of law, impartiality, independence, and professionalism.
Yes.
But that's not the case, because the judgments of the tribunal or the judgments of any court is based, of course, on the facts of the case and on the legal rules, but these legal rules is interpreted in light of the background context, and the background context refers to the social, cultural, economic, and political context, and that's why the judges of the tribunals must be well versed with different political, economic, and social contexts, and that's why. Usually, the representation of the United Nations Dispute Tribunal should reflect the diversity of the member states of the United Nations. So, in the first place, this would add to the voices to the representations of the Global South.
Okay.
Second, I think it means a lot for us and even for the United Nations Dispute Tribunal, in a sense that my presence in the tribunal will have a very critical role in enriching the jurisprudence of the tribunal itself, okay, because I share my experiences. I go there with my indigenous knowledge and local expertise that I acquired through my many years of experience in local judicial setting. And so this will enable the tribunal to cross-fertilize the global practice with the local practice, and this contributes in enriching the jurisprudence of the United Nations Dispute Tribunal itself. And I think, in addition to that, I think this will give me an exposure, for me personally, to new skills and new knowledge, and use these new skills and new knowledge back home for local capacity building and local institutional building. And finally, I think it's an excellent career move for me, because it gives me an opportunity to work with the brightest and motivated professionals from across the globe, and hopefully this unlocks many opportunities of personal growth and professional career development for me. That's why I said it's an excellent career move,
yes,
and it means a lot for me.
Yes, exactly. Not only for you, but for your country, as you said, and for Africa, of course. And also, it just gives this inclusivity to the UNDT, which is also appreciable.
Exactly.
So let me come to you again, and let me ask you this: as a half judge of UNDT, United Nations Dispute Tribunal, what are the major responsibilities and duties that you have now?
I think the major responsibilities is, in short, to carry out the normal business of the judge. The normal business of the judge is to adjudicate the case that's presented before the tribunal.
Yes.
This includes hearing of the cases, issuing of orders, and rendering the binding judgments.
I really want your take on the judiciary systems and the reform process of the justice system together. How do you see this judiciary system in Ethiopia? What are the challenges, success stories, and what should be done to rectify some of the issues?
I served in the Ethiopian judiciary for almost 20 years, mainly as a judge.
Okay.
At different levels of the court in both regional and federal positions. And in the last 4 years, I served as the Vice President of the Federal Supreme Court. My duties include presiding over one of the cassation benches of the Federal Supreme Court, and I was also served as the Deputy Chair of the Council of Constitutional Inquiry and Deputy Chair of Judicial Administration Commission.
Okay.
In addition, I think I led policy matters, particularly the reform programs introduced to the Ethiopian judicial system.
All right.
So I can say one of our notable achievements is the successful implementation of the court reform packages and programs introduced to the Ethiopian judicial system.
All right.
We participated in identifying the root causes of the Ethiopian problems by participating on the researches and the studies that were conducted to identify the problems of the Ethiopian judiciary. Like, for instance, we participated on comprehensive justice system baseline studies. In addition to that, we also involved in implementation, monitoring, and coordination of these reform activities. I don't want to go to the details of the reform activities that we introduced to the Ethiopian judicial system, but just to mention some of the major areas that we introduced. For instance, if you take the massive and robust legislative reform of the judiciary, whereby the two major proclamations and many regulations and directives were adopted. And also we can mention the introduction of the case flow management. The case flow management, which empowers for the first time that we introduced into the Ethiopian legal system, which empowers the judge to effectively manage the case from the time of initiation up until the final disposition of the case.
All right.
Using employing different management techniques and setting the time standards on the basis of the nature of the case, taking into account the differentiated case management system. We introduced the court annexed mediation system. Different reform packages were introduced to strengthen the commercial benches, for the branding of the judiciary, and even we laid a foundational work for electronic case management system.
All right.
And so generally too many reform packages were introduced to the Ethiopian judicial system to make the Ethiopian judiciary more efficient, to modernize our courts, and to make our judiciary more efficient and effective in delivering the quality judgments, and also to ensure accountability and independence of the court by making the courts generally accessible to the Ethiopian courts. So the success story is that I can say significant results were registered after the introduction of these reform packages, but still we have some challenges.
Right.
At least I can mention some of the challenges that the Ethiopian courts are facing. I can say, in my opinion, still delivering the quality judgments is still one of the gaps that we have in the Ethiopian judiciary. And again, ensuring accountability based on the constitutional principles is also one of the major gaps that the Ethiopian judiciary are facing. But for me, in my opinion, the major challenge, I think, relates with this court's power of check and balance. I think this is the major role, the inherent role of the judiciaries is to exercise this power of check and balance over the other organs, the other branches of the government. And this refers to the judicial oversight. Usually they call it the judicial review, because the judicial oversight is a mechanism by which the judiciary examines the legality of legislative and executive actions according to the constitution and other laws of the country.
All right.
And I think this is like the well-established principle practiced throughout the world, across the world, in all jurisdictions, I can say. In so doing, the judiciary, in so doing, protects the individual civil liberties by reviewing the legislative and the executive actions violating the individual liberties that are protected in the Constitution. And again, this is very significant because in upholding the rule of law and transparency and accountability, and also enables the transparent judicial process that is governed by the law, respecting democratic principles and values. So I think, in my opinion, the major challenge relates to this judicial inherent power of the judiciary in exercising its oversight over the other branches of the government, because this is really very important. We need to address, I think it requires the attention of all stakeholders, including the government, the society, and all other stakeholders, taking into account the political tradition and the political culture of our country. This is not an easy task, but we need to push forward again. It also requires a constitutional reform, a constitutional amendment, and therefore I think it requires the joint efforts of all. But I think this is, I can say, one of the major, because the judiciary is not operating in its full capacity, in its full mandate, unless the judiciary exercises this power, oversight over.
And that's for a number of reasons, right?
Exactly.
Yes. talking about yourself as Deputy Chief Justice of the Federal Supreme Court of Ethiopia. You resigned from that office, and also with Romaza Ashanafi resigned. And some say that this could have left some vacuum. What is your take on that?
No, because I don't think this would create a vacuum, because in this country, it's a big country with, there are always very experienced and qualified judges and practitioners to fill the gaps, to replace and fill the gaps. So even I strongly believe that the current president and vice president of the Federal Supreme Court, they have all the potential to effectively manage the court reform programs as stipulated in the 5-year strategic plan of the Federal Court with more depth and capacity.
Okay. There are lots of Ethiopians and Africans and others, of course, that look you up and that one day they want to be like you, joining such international organizations, be it the United Nations or otherwise. What's your message to them?
Of course, I think in the past, even there were many hardworking Ethiopians in the past, and even currently, who assumed higher positions in multilateral institutions, but they are very, very few in number. So we need to work hard to increase Ethiopia's representation in multilateral institutions, including the United Nations. This requires preparations, of course, preparation on the part of the government, preparation on the parts of the society, and the preparation at an individual level. To be globally competitive, what's needed is just to have an extensive experience and high quality education. That's it. So the message I have for especially for young Ethiopians in my profession and even outside of my profession is that you can be whatever you like, or you can achieve whatever goal you set if you work hard and focus on your studies.
Wow.
This requires to be consistently disciplined, of course. Because it's only when you work hard and focus on your studies that in the future that will have judges of the Ethiopian judges in the of the International Court of Justice, Ethiopian CEOs and presidents of multilateral institutions. So by so doing, you inspire more and become, of course, a role model for your country and for your people.
Well, I think that's a message, dedication, commitment, and the vision.
Exactly.
Yes, that's the message, I think. I have already finished my questions, but if you have any final message that you want to convey, it's all yours.
I think my final message is I would like to take this forum to thank my family, my friends, my colleagues, and others who in one way or another supported during all this process. Thank you very much.
Ato Solomon, thank you so much. I know the best is yet to come, and I wish you success in your career, which is an international career, which we are all proud of you. And thank you so much for making the time.
Thank you for giving me the chance.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Well, dear viewers, with that, we come to the end of today's program. And thank you as well for having been with us so far. Until I see you next time with yet another program. It's goodbye from me, Shifara Olako. Take care and